Hey, it's Elliot, and today I'm finally going to be talking about my ADHD diagnosis. To get started, I'm just going to go over kind of a little bit what ADHD is, and then I'm going to kind of read over some of the diagnostic criteria. I'm over kind of in a weird space because I'm looking at my laptop, and I have like the diagnostic criteria according to the DSM 5, which is like the diagnostic, like official diagnostic criteria. And then I'm going to talk about some of my symptoms. I have my medical binder here, and I'm going to pull up some of my diagnostic report stuff. So let's get started. So the first thing that I want to talk about is just kind of a really loose, talking about what ADHD is. So ADHD is Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. And there are three main types of ADHD. So there's the primary inattentive type, which was formerly considered ADD, but it's all the same diagnosis now. Primary hyperactive type, which is the kind that you probably are the most likely, at least a little bit familiar with, and then the combined type. I'm pretty sure that I have the primary hyperactive impulsive type, but I do have a good number of symptoms of the inattentive type, but not like, so I'm not quite combined, but I'll get into that. I'm going to read through the diagnostic criteria. So the first type, part A, is a persistent pattern of inattention or hyperactivity impulsivity that interferes with functioning or development as characterized by 1, which I'm going to go over, and or 2. And then Type 1 talks about the inattentive symptoms. So part 1 of criterion A is inattention, which is 6 or more of the following symptoms have persisted for at least 6 months to a degree that is inconsistent with developmental level and that negatively impacts directly on social and academic/occupational activities. Note: the symptoms are not solely a manifestation of oppositional behavior, defiance, hostility, or failure to understand tasks or instructions. For older adolescents and adults age 17 and older, at least 5 symptoms are required. And as I go through them, I'm going to talk about whether I have this or not. A, often fails to give close attention to details or makes careless mistakes in schoolwork, at work, or during other activities, e.g. overlooks or misses details, work is inaccurate. So I have this a little bit, I think, but not to the extent that some people do. B, often has difficulty sustaining attention in tasks or play activities, e.g. has difficulty remaining focused during lectures, conversations, or lengthy reading. And again, I have this to some extent. Often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly, e.g. mind seems elsewhere, even in the absence of obvious distraction. I'm not sure if I have this. Sometimes I forget instructions, but I don't have that particular. Like I said, I don't have as much of the inattentive symptoms. D, often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, or duties in the workplace. E.g. starts tasks but quickly loses focus and is easily sidetracked. So I have this kind of, I get distracted, but it's not to the extent that I think this criterion is talking about. F, often avoids, dislikes, or is reluctant to engage in tasks that require sustained mental effort, e.g. schoolwork or homework. For older adults, adolescents and adults, preparing reports, completing forms, reviewing lengthy papers. So I don't mind it. It's sometimes difficult, but I don't really have this. G, often loses things necessary for tasks or activities, e.g. school materials, pencils, books, tools, wallets, keys, paperwork, eyeglasses, mobile telephones. Yes, I am constantly losing things, even if they're right in plain sight. I once spent 45 minutes looking for my phone, and it was actually in the first place that I looked. Every day, I misplace things. H, is often easily distracted by extraneous stimuli. For older adolescents and adults may include unrelated thoughts. Oh yeah, especially the unrelated thoughts. My train of thought goes whoop, and people are like, where did Yeah. Is often forgetful in daily activities, e.g. doing chores, running errands. For older adolescents and adults, returning calls, paying bills, keeping appointments. So I avoid some of these tasks, but I don't necessarily forget them. I do have some, like keeping track, but I don't really have that. And the avoidance is, I think, more related to my autism and more executive function things, which exist with ADHD, but I'll get into that. And so, like I said, I have some of the inattentive symptoms, but I'm primarily hyperactive impulsive. And I'll talk about, never mind. Or not never mind, but here you go. 2, hyperactivity and impulsivity. And it's the same thing as with inattentive. You have to have 6 or more persisted for at least 6 months to a degree that is inconsistent with developmental level and that negatively impacts directly on social and academic/occupational activities and are not like a manifestation of oppositional behavior, defiance, hostility, or failure to understand tasks or instructions. For older adolescents and adults, at least 5 symptoms are required. A, often fidgets with or taps hands or feet or squirms and seats. Yeah. I am constantly moving. Just constantly. If it's not my fingers, it's my feet or a fidget or like moving, just squirming. It's funny. I'll talk more later. B, often leaves seats in situations when remaining seated is expected, e.g. leaves his or her place in the classroom, in the office or other workplace, or in situations that require remaining in place. I don't have this as much, but when I was little, I had a really hard time staying at dinner. But I'm going to talk more about my ADHD when I was little in a little bit, because it changes as you get older, and that's why some of that myth about ADHD going away as you get older is present. C, often runs about or climbs in situations where it is inappropriate. Note, in adolescents or adults may be limited to feeling restless. So I am so restless. When I was little, I literally just like ran into walls. D, often unable to play or engage in leisure activities quietly. I'm not sure. That one's a little hard. I think I beat that one. I'm not sure. E, is often on the go, acting as if driven by a motor, e.g. is unable to be or uncomfortable being still for extended time, as in restaurants, meetings, may be experienced by others as being restless or difficult to keep up with. Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And now that I'm older, I can kind of control it a little bit, but I need to go. What is this reaction that I'm having? Okay. Easily distracted. Need I say more? F, often talks excessively. Often blurts out an answer before a question has been completed, e.g. completes people's sentences, cannot wait for turn to conversation. My mom gets so mad at me. I'll answer her questions before she finishes them, because I'm like, yes, I know, yes. And she gets so annoyed at me. It's like, I'm like, but I know what you're gonna say, and you're talking so slowly, I need you to talk faster. H, often has difficulty waiting his or her turn, e.g. while waiting in line. Somewhat, yeah. I get bored. I often interrupts or intrudes on others. E.g. butts into conversations, games, or activities, may start using other people's things without asking or receiving permission. For adults, and adolescents and adults may intrude into or take over what others are doing. I hate it. It's one of my least, I feel so guilty about it. I feel so bad about it. I feel so bad. And then those are the symptoms. And then B, several inattentive or hyperactive impulsive symptoms were present prior to age 12 years. Because it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. So you can't just develop ADHD. That doesn't mean you can't be diagnosed late. Like some people aren't diagnosed until they're older. C, several inattentive or hyperactive impulsive symptoms are present in 2 or more settings, e.g. at home, school, or work with friends or relatives, and other activities. And this is part of why I had a hard time getting my diagnosis when I was little. And and I'll talk about that in the next part. I think I'm going to turn this into a couple parts because we're at 10 minutes and I'm still going through the criteria. And if someone with ADHD is watching this, they're going to see a long video and be like, nope, can't do that. D, there's clear evidence that the symptoms interfere with or reduce the quality of social, academic, or occupational functioning. E, the symptoms do not occur exclusively during the course of schizophrenia or another psychotic disorder and are not better explained by another mental disorder, e.g. mood disorder, anxiety disorder, dissociative disorder, personality disorder, substance intoxication, or withdrawal. And then, like I said, there's the 3 types. And then specify if in partial remission, so when full criteria were previously met, fewer than the full criteria have been met for the past 6 months, and the symptoms still result in impairment in social, academic, or occupational function. And then specify current severity, mild, few if any symptoms in excess of those required to make the diagnosis are present, and symptoms result in no more than minor impairment in social or occupational functioning. So you have enough symptoms to meet criteria for diagnosis, but not many more. Moderate symptoms or functional impairments between mild and severe are present. So, like what the word moderate means. Severe, many symptoms in excess of those required to make the diagnosis, or several symptoms that are particularly severe are present or the symptoms result in marked impairment in social or occupational functioning. I'm not actually 100% sure where I fall on the spectrum. I'm gonna guess it's moderate, and I'll go over that in the next part because I'm looking at this video, the length, and I think that this is gonna be a multi-part video. And then that's the really core criteria, but then the DSM goes on. So diagnostic features, and it kind of talks about it. The essential feature of attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD, is a persistent pattern of inattention and or hyperactivity impulsivity that interferes with functioning or development. Inattention manifests behaviorally in ADHD as wandering off, lacking persistence, having difficulty sustaining focus, and being disorganized, and is not due to defiance or lack of comprehension. So I have some of that inattention, but it's really, I have very, very mild inattention, but then you look at my hyperactivity impulsivity, and it's there. Hyperactivity refers to excessive motor activity, such as a child running about when it is not appropriate, or excessive fidgeting, tapping, or talkativeness. Yeah, me to a T. In adults, hyperactivity may manifest as extreme restlessness or wearing others out with their activity. Impulsivity refers to hasty actions that occur in the moment without forethought and that have potential for harm to the individual, i.e. darting into the street without looking. Impulsivity may reflect a desire for immediate rewards or an inability to delay gratification. Impulsive behaviors may manifest as social intrusiveness, e.g. interrupting others excessively, and or as making important decisions without consideration of long-term consequences, e.g. taking a job without adequate information. So, yeah, and that's one thing that people don't always understand, that hyperactivity and impulsivity have many ways of manifesting. So, your hyperactivity can be in your speech. Listen to me talk and you can hear that. People tell me that I talk too fast. My mom tells me that my grandmother can't understand what I'm saying because I'm talking too quickly. And impulsivity can be, really reckless things. It can also just be saying things or impulsive purchasing of things. I bought a 35-pound pumpkin, or it was a 30-pound pumpkin. That was a choice that I made. Sometimes I'll say the impulse out loud because I get the impulse out by saying it, but then if someone else says, yeah, do it, then I'm like, oh boy, you just... ADHD begins in childhood. The requirement that several symptoms be present before age 12 years conveys the importance of, so basically you can be diagnosed older, but symptoms have to, I'm not going to read that whole paragraph. Manifestations of the disorder must be present in more than one setting. Confirmation of substantial symptoms across settings cannot be done accurately without consulting informants who have seen the individual in those settings. So, I don't know. I know the diagnosis process for, I'm not sure if she'll love me saying this, but my sister's getting evaluated for ADHD because it runs in families. Isn't that fun? And they have to do a home and school observation, or sometimes they'll ask teachers for their input. Like for me when I was younger, it was very obvious at home and clinically, but I also had anxiety, and I had hid it in school, which is actually pretty common, especially for AFAB folks, assigned female at birth. And then there's associated features supporting diagnosis, so other symptoms that people with ADHD often have, but are not in the diagnostic criteria specifically. Mild delays in language, motor, or social development are not specific to ADHD, but often co-occur. Associated features may include low frustration tolerance, irritability or mood lability, so like mood swings and just like emotion regulation issues happen a lot in ADHD. And it's something that I think we don't talk about enough when we talk about ADHD, because they're present really commonly. Even the absence of a specific learning disorder, academic or work performance is often impaired. Yeah, I don't have a learning disorder, but I have ADHD, so I need some accommodations in order to function in college. Inattentive behavior associated with various underlying cognitive processes, and individuals with ADHD may exhibit cognitive problems on tests of attention, executive function, or memory. Although these tests are not sufficiently sensitive or specific to serve as diagnostic indices. So what that means is, I have a really hard time with executive function, but like that in of itself. And when I was getting reevaluated, because I got reevaluated when I was 17, or was it right after? It was right around my 18th birthday. I got kind of reevaluated. And I did some other tests, and they check look at other things. I definitely have difficulties with executive functioning, but that alone doesn't make you qualify for ADHD diagnosis. By early adulthood, ADHD is associated with an increased risk of suicide attempts, particularly when comorbid or co-occurring, things that are often seen with the disorder. When comorbid with mood, conduct, or substance use disorders. Which is, actually, I was reading over this and I was like, oh, that's interesting, not surprising, because the combination of mood lability and impulsivity makes people with ADHD a unique risk. I also know that, especially if you have undiagnosed ADHD, that can cause a lot of problems. Prevalence. Population surveys suggest that ADHD occurs in most cultures in about 5% of children and about 2.5% of adults, which is good to know. Development and course. Basically what this is, I'm not going to read this whole thing. So it's often diagnosed during elementary school years. It's different depending on gender and type. So inattentive ADHD is diagnosed often much later, especially in girls or people who are assigned female at birth. Can be really a unique thing. And it kind of changes as you get older, and so I'm going to read this bit. In most individuals with ADHD, symptoms of motoric, so physical hyperactivity, motoric hyperactivity become less obvious in adolescence and adulthood, but difficulties with restlessness, inattention, poor planning, and impulsivity persist. A substantial proportion of children with ADHD remain relatively impaired into adulthood. I'm skipping around. ADHD is most often defined. Inattention becomes more prominent and impairing during elementary. Disorder is relatively stable through early adolescence, but some individuals have a worsened course with development of antisocial behaviors. I'm not going to go into that. In preschool, the main manifestation is hyperactivity, impulsivity. Inattention becomes more prominent during elementary school. During adolescence, signs of hyperactivity, e.g. running and climbing, are less common and may be confined to fidgetiness or an inner feeling of jitteriness, restlessness, or impatience. Yeah, I still actually have motoric hyperactivity. I still need to move, but not quite as much as I had as a kid. In adulthood, along with inattention and restlessness, impulsivity may remain problematic even when hyperactivity has diminished. So ADHD changes as you get older, but doesn't go away. There's different risk factors and prognostic factors. So, I'm not going into that. Gender-related diagnostic issues. ADHD is more frequent in males than females in the general population, with a ratio of approximately 2.2 to 1 in children and 1.6 to 1 in adults. That's partly because women often are not diagnosed until they're older. I have a friend who, I'm in college, and she's like, maybe I have this. But only quite recently. So, females are more likely than males to present primarily with inattentive features. Yeah, that's another thing. It's harder for, I did a little bit of a paper on this about, for a class about, like, actually, you know what? I might try to share that now that I'm talking about it. We had to choose a topic for one of my psych classes, and I chose ADHD in girls and some of the diagnostic issues. I'm really having a reaction now. ADHD brain. And then functional consequences of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. ADHD is associated with reduced school performance and academic attainment, social rejection, and in adults, poor occupational performance, attainment, and attendance, and higher probability of unemployment, as well as elevated interpersonal conflict. So it does impact you in adulthood, even. And a lot of kids with ADHD have a hard time at school. One of the bigger red flags for getting diagnosed sometimes is if your grades are, like, poor. I didn't have that, but a lot of it was I kind of didn't. So I was a gifted kid, and so it was never really, like, realized, but I'm probably what you'd consider a twice exceptional kid. So I had impairments and giftedness, so that kind of mitigates each other a little bit. So I kind of skated by in school. I did really well, but I wasn't necessarily doing things in, like, a really great way, like planning. I got my projects done, but, like, it's affecting me more now is, like, my ability to, like mitigate that, or, like, kind of is gone down. So I'm like, I never learned these skills. Children with ADHD are significantly more likely than their peers without ADHD to develop conduct disorder in adolescence and antisocial personality disorder in adulthood, consequently increasing the likelihood for substance use disorders and incarceration. The risk of subsequent substance use disorders is elevated, especially when conduct disorder or antisocial personality disorder develops. And part of that's the impulsivity and, like, just kind of people with ADHD are like our prefrontal cortex, which is, like, your the housing of planning is impaired. So individuals with ADHD are more likely than peers to be injured. Impulsivity. Traffic accidents and violations are more frequent in drivers with ADHD. There may be an elevated likelihood of obesity amongst individuals with ADHD. A lot of that comes down to impulsivity, and, like, planning skills and, like, impulse control issues. Inadequate or variable self-application to tasks that require sustained effort. So, like, sustained effort is often interpreted by others as laziness, irresponsibility, or failure to cooperate. Family relationships may be characterized by discord and negative interactions. Peer relationships are often disrupted by peer rejection, neglect, or teasing of the individual with ADHD. On average, individuals with ADHD obtain less schooling, have poorer vocational achievement, and have reduced intellectual scores than their peers, although there is great variability. It can also be really hard to accurately test someone's, like, not that IQ scores are really a great measure of intelligence to begin with, but it's like you're distracted, so you're not really getting a good idea of how intelligent you actually are. In its severe form, the disorder is markedly impairing, affecting social, family, and scholastic/occupational adjustment. Academic deficits, school-related problems, and peer neglect tend to be most associated with elevated symptoms of inattention, whereas peer rejection, and to a lesser extent, accidental injury, are more salient with marked symptoms of hyperactivity or impulsivity. So, like, it's there's different risks depending on which kind you have, and then talks about differential diagnoses, so things that share features with ADHD. Actually, you know what? I'm at 25 minutes. So I'm going to stop here for this video, and I'm going to talk about differential diagnosis and my ADHD in the next video. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Actually, I'm going to go film the next part right now. Bye!